Welcome. You're listening to the Good Girls Don't podcast with Ashley Ray
and Verity Mansfield.
This is the podcast where we smash those rules that we've been taught to follow both as men and women and burn the damn rule book. We're tackling the big issues and the issues nobody wants to talk about, and we'll be fiercely feminist about it.
This podcast is about inspiration, education, compassion, and being the change that you need to see in this world. This podcast is for the trailblazers, the freedom fighters, and the soul igniters, and all the women just like you who are ready to break the good girl rules and be heard.
We acknowledge the traditional custodians of Australia and its First Nations people on which this podcast is produced and consumed. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging.
Get ready for the revolution. It's coming to you now. It's coming to you now. You're gonna see revolution. And they'll never bring us down. No, they'll never bring us down.
Hey Verity, I've got a question for you.
What's that?
Have you ever felt like you're not pretty enough to do business? That was with a question mark.
Oh, do you know what? I fight it because there are definitely times I don't feel pretty enough, but then I know in my head I need to break that rule. So I will do it anyway, but it still is in the back of my head.
Do you know who else is smashing that good girl rule?
Would that be Swapna Thomas?
Oh my God, you'd be so right. Are you psychic? Like, are we twinning right now? Or are we just super organized in the background?
Swapna is amazing. So a couple of weeks ago, she put up this post on Facebook of herself, and it really challenged this idea about, what beautiful is, and why women are so afraid of taking up space in their lives and space in the business world.
Ooh, tell me more.
Yeah, so Swapna,
Who is Swapna?
she works with women coaches who want to embrace their inner rebel and do business their way and live 100% on purpose. She helps to develop firebrand mindset and goes rogue with their marketing so that she can confidently help these women to own their own genius, to claim their voice, and to get well paid for it, which I think is everything about breaking the good girl rules.
Can we just back up for a second? Because I basically feel like what we've done is we've invited a rebel onto the podcast, and we're about to start a rebellion.
Revelation.
A revelation, yes. You could even say it's a revolution. So yeah, she was fascinating. And, I really love this whole idea about talking about body image and business, and how so many of us, so many women are afraid to be visible in their business because of, I guess, the pressures of society to say that you have to be beautiful to be the face of a business. You don't have to look far on social media, especially Instagram, that to have, these Insta bodies, promoting these amazing businesses. Like all the successful business women are look like Barbie dolls, and, like hardly wearing any clothes, or, swinging around in bikinis on luxury locations saying, look how fabulous and amazing my life is, and I've got a valid business and this is how much money I'm making, blah, blah, blah. And so it really puts a lot of pressure on women in business who do not feel like, that they've got too much cellulite to be the face of their business. Like I literally have had women ringing me out of the blue, like they get my details for my business, and they call me and they're literally in tears. This is the first time I'll speak to them. They'll be in tears on the phone saying, I am not beautiful enough to own a business. I am not pretty enough to be the face of my business. I've got to give a presentation tomorrow. I've got to give a talk tomorrow. I've got to do attend a symposium or a seminar tomorrow, and be an official speaker tomorrow, and I'm not pretty enough to do this. And it breaks my heart. So I loved this. I absolutely love, any conversation around body image, self-worth, and, allowing, I guess, empowering women to be visible in their business and in their genius. Wow. So all of that is coming up on the Good Girls podcast.
Stay tuned.
Thank you so much, Swapna, for agreeing to chat with us today.
Thank you. It is an absolute honor to be on the Good Girls Don't podcast because, we need to break all those good girl rules.
And there's nothing more we love than a girl who does break the rules. And one of the things I absolutely adored about you was this post that you shared, I think it was maybe about a week or 2 weeks ago. And it was this brilliant post of you standing in your absolute full glory in your gym gear. And it was next to a mannequin, that people would refer to as a plus-sized mannequin. And your post was so powerful. And it was kind of this whole idea about, why does society force us to live up to an image of where we're thin, where we take up less space, where our body is ashamed, for being, anything but super skinny. And it was just such a powerful post. Can you just let us know or share with our audience about why you posted that? What was the anger or the motivation or the passion that was behind that post?
It was definitely a mix of, personal indignation and in general what I see in the world. I am a curvy woman and, proudly so. I don't want to be stick thin or any other parameter of society's fitness, because the message that we largely get is that thin is fit.
Yeah.
And we all need to just, starve ourselves, do whatever it takes to get that bikini body, right? That's the messaging we all get. But if you really want to achieve fitness, it has nothing to do with size. Honestly, I have seen people of all sizes be fit and unfit.
Yeah. So there's people who are, who have a great body and have heart attacks. There's people who are thin and skinny who have, serious health issues and, even diabetes. Like, we have this really warped idea that thin means that we're healthy. And there's a brilliant Instagram profile. I think it's called Healthy is the New Skinny. And I kind of really love it because it's this idea of promoting healthiness above everything else, that it's not about, the lack of a thigh gap or, how flat our stomachs are as a sign of fitness, but it's like, emotional health, the health of our mind, the health of the inside of our bodies, not just about this superficial look on the outside.
And that is exactly what drove that post was if anyone is trying to pursue that fitness, instead, regardless of whether they are thin or they are not thin, they should be encouraged, right? They should be encouraged to be fit and be healthier than they already are. And if a brand is trying to make it inclusive, if a brand is trying to make health inclusive by creating these plus size, fitness wear, then why isn't that okay? Because that was the entire premise of the article, that nobody, who is a size 20 needs these clothes because they are already diabetic, they are unfit, they are unhealthy, and they need a surgery or some knee surgery or something, and they are not going to buy these clothes. And that was like ridiculous, and it was really so presumptuous that it got me quite ranty actually. And the message that I was taking away from it was that it was just telling women that you have no right to be bigger in any way. You can't take up space. Nobody wants to see your big bodies. Or, the verbatim, what it said was, nobody wants to see these orangutan bodies.
Yeah.
As if, our bodies they get uglier as they get bigger.
Yeah.
Like how?
it's the same thing where, you know, like for women who, you know, as we're younger, we're kind of the archetype of the maiden, and then we get older and we, you know, maybe we birth children and we become the archetype of the mother. And then, you know, like in our old age, we go into the crone, and it's this really crazy idea that all marketing really is aimed at the maiden figure, you know, the youthful, the pre-pregnant. She's only just entering womanhood. You know, she has this youthful, what we refer to as this youthful, you know, body that actually hasn't even experienced the world. And so damaging. Like, we're not accepting other body forms. We're not accepting other identities that women have. You know, we're not celebrating the older body even. You know, like women in their 50s and their 60s and their 70s, you know, who've experienced life and who, you know, who show the scars even on their bodies, whether it's, you know, cellulite or stretch marks or surgery, or anything else. It's this ridiculous idea that everything has to be polished and perfect. And it's so important, I think, with the conversations that you and I have had with our little messages is, you know, this concept, how it does affect women in business. Because I have spoken to a few women who would refer themselves as plus size to have that fear of visibility in their business, or even women who just aren't the, you know, the typical, you know, I don't want to say typical. I want to say typical in terms of marketing, of what we get presented with. But if you don't have a flat stomach and don't have gorgeous long blonde hair, you know, that's perfectly styled with curls on the end, you know, that you don't really have any right to be visible, especially on something like Instagram. You know, everyone wants the Insta body, the Insta looks, and it's really quite toxic. So then, you know, I think even you were alluding to this, we end up creating business women who don't feel pretty enough to be the face of their business.
Absolutely. That's the overall messaging that, you know, anyone who enters this business gets initially, because you see all these perfect model-esque bodies. They are Instagram ready all the time, and their life is like a glamorous magazine. Yeah. And I now know that, you know, most of it is created, it's manufactured. Nobody lives like that every day. But it's difficult when you see this messaging all the time. It's difficult to separate that, you know, what is real and what is unreal. And what happens is you just create these massive expectations of what you need to look like to have that kind of success. Like, you know, we call this a lifestyle business often, rather than just a business. It's a lifestyle business. And if you don't have the body to have that lifestyle, then you feel like, am I even worth it? Like, am I even, you know, enough to create this? Yeah. As if we don't have all, you know, other baggages already weighing us down. Like, here is one more. You better, because, you know, look at me. Like, I'm an Indian with brown skin living in India with curly hair. Like, I'm the antithesis of anything that pops up if you write. Like a woman, you know, internet marketing person. Like, it's all white women with blonde hair, with perfect straight sleek hair, looking always pretty and, you know, just out of the gym. And I'm none of those. So it really took me a lot of time to believe that I belong here, because everything that I saw was telling me, you don't. I don't belong here. I don't fit here. And the only way for me to fit here is try to be them. And then how can I be that? You know, right? So for me, it was easy because there is no way I'm going to become white overnight. So I had to, like, you know, stand my ground and say, like, this is me, take it or leave it. And it worked out for me. But I can see a lot of people who feel that pressure to just conform and become another version of these uber successful women. And I'm not judging them at all. You know, they are doing the best that they can with, you know, what they have been given. But we have to understand that there is no rule that says that you have to look like this or be like this to be the kind of success that you want to be.
Exactly. And I think that's why it's so important that we have women of, other, nationalities, of different hair colors, of different body sizes, of different heights, whatever it is, to stand up and be visible in their businesses so that they're the ones that start breaking down the stereotypes. If only the blonde, Barbie dolls are the ones who are willing to step up and say, hey, I'm successful in business, it's not their fault. They're doing what they're doing, but it really does come actually down to a sense of responsibility for the rest of us to get visible in our business so that we fill in those gaps and say, hey, do you know what, I'm also successful in business and I'm a size 12. Hey, I'm also successful in business and I'm a size 26. I'm successful in business and I'm from India. I'm successful in business and I'm from Africa. I'm successful in business and I'm Korean but born in Perth in Australia. Do you know what I mean? Like, we need all of this diversity, but we need people who come from the diversity to have that courage and break the rules and to step up, which is hard, but it's also where I think you seem to step in, which is so beautiful. Like, I love your message. I love that you talk about working with rebel women who have a big purpose and who want to own their genius. And I think that was such the powerful thing, when I started listening to you, was this idea that, because I think this is how a conversation went from talking about body image to being afraid of being seen because we're told to hide our bodies if it's not perfect, that no one wants to look at it if it's not perfect. And then we take that messaging into our business and we hide in our businesses and we don't speak out and we don't speak up and we don't put our hands up to the scene. And, I've had women, so as I coach and mentor women about breaking the good girl rules, a good part of that is about beauty and self-worth. And I've had business women ringing me up in tears and saying, hi, I'm such and such, you don't know me. And they will literally be in tears crying and they'll be like, I've got to go to a presentation tomorrow. It's my first presentation for my business and I'm too ugly. And it's horrible. Like, these women say it how it is. They say exactly what they're feeling. And they are in tears on the phone, worried about their crooked teeth, worried about their nose, worried about their complexion, worried that they're just not pretty enough to be the face of their business. They don't want to do Facebook Lives, on Facebook. They don't want to take photos of themselves and put them up on Instagram. And as we all know in business, unless we can attach a face to the business, it's hard for us to connect emotionally to that business. It's hard for us, like, we want to know who that person is behind the business. We want to connect with the being. So tell us a bit more about what you do in order of, like, connecting women to own their genius, to claim their voice, to take up space, to be seen.
So here's the thing, women that I work with, they have massive energy. Okay, their message, the change that they want to bring into the world, the transformation that they want to create for their clients, it's big energy, right? And energy needs space. It needs space to expand, right? You must have heard about Amy Cuddy and her research about, the power pose for women.
Yeah, on body language.
Right? On body language, right? And her research says that taking up space, it increases testosterone and it decreases cortisol, which is the stress hormone, right?
Yeah.
So physically, if you take up space, that's what happens. But it also happens if you're mentally taking up space, if you are psychologically taking up space, if you are really, claiming your voice and you're owning your genius and you're saying, this is what I want to talk about unabashedly, without any filters, without any reservations, it will have the same effect. You don't have to manspread to just get that feeling of, testosterone. You don't have to do that. Like, who wants to see that? Nobody. But you can, even when you do that in your voice, in your messaging, in your marketing, if you start taking up space, it will have the same effect. your cortisol goes down, so you don't feel as stressed about your business, about the work that you're doing as you normally would. But it's not easy. I know this from experience. I know this from working with so many clients. There are a number of things that come up when women want to take up more space. So one of the things that I see a lot of women struggling with is that they feel that they are imposters, and this whole fraud complex comes up, and they don't want to take up space because they believe there is someone who can do it better. So that they need this space more than me because I'm a fraud. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So how do I take up space with my work and with my messaging? Right? So they shrink themselves and they keep themselves small. They don't do those Facebook lives because they feel I'm taking someone else's space by being myself, by being visible, and by being loud about my message. Right? So that's one of the obstacles that come up. Another major obstacle that I see is that women think that they need to stay small and take less space if they want to be relatable. Right? If they want their clients to relate to them, because there is this whole diva persona that's the messaging. If you see movies, if you see pop culture, any woman who demands for anything, who is loud enough and opinionated enough to say something that she needs this to be good at her work, or she wants it to be done a certain way, she's labeled a diva. And nobody wants to be labeled a diva. We all want to be the girl next door, the low maintenance girl that everyone gets along with.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's so important because, that is the basis of the good girl, is the fact that she wants to be judged as good. She wants to be acceptable. And as women, our social connections and relationships are pretty much the most important things that we value in our lives. And, anything that threatens that, anything that threatens us from being seen as good, for us, we relate it to basically social suicide. And, so we will do anything to stay socially, or we think is socially acceptable. But like you said, it constrains us. It steals our voice. It steals our power, our identity, our self-worth, and, especially our genius, which is so sad.
Absolutely. And there's this whole, it affects everyone. It's not just us, it affects our clients, it affects our peers. When we stay small, we don't give anyone else permission to be big either. Because the third obstacle that I wanted to talk about was that if we think that if we take up more space with our voice, with our message, with our marketing, we are going to trigger other people who want that space. And this really plays out with women a lot.
Wow.
We feel that we are going to step on toes, we are going to rock the boat, and we are going to say things that are going to get people to attack us, because there is just so much space for everyone. Like, this is all the patriarchal, scarcity for what is available for women. Because we have been given this conditioning that only, you have only this much of the pie, and you have to fight among yourselves to get whatever, you can get for yourself. So that brings us the ugly side of, of feeling triggered and feeling like she's encroaching in my area and my genius. And the reality is, especially with the online marketing world, like, it's limitless, right? Everyone has their space. Like, there is an infinite permutation and combination of how your message can play out, of the number of people who can work with you. So there is absolutely no scarcity, but the conditioning is so strong that we feel that, we are going to get in trouble with someone because of what we are going to say. And it's literally like, how the feelings of like Mary Antoinette being beheaded because of the things that she did, she was not supposed to.
Yeah.
That sort of feeling comes up, right? Like you're literally going to be beheaded or isolated out of the community because you said some things that you were not supposed to say, or you made some people uncomfortable that you were not supposed to. And this really happens a lot in the women entrepreneurial space more than, men. That's what I have seen.
Well, it happens everywhere. Like I've got 2 young girls who are in, I think, year 4. I say I think, I'm such a great mum. I think they're in year 4 and the other one's in year 7. And, primary school all gets mishmashed around. And, I see them, like we were talking about this the other day, and, they admit that they do not like putting their hand up in class. They don't like answering questions in case they get it wrong. And this is what shocks me, because we talk so much about feminism at home. We talk about, so much about, girl power and empowering women, and they've, facilitated workshops with me as paid facilitators. They didn't get paid the same amount I did, but they got paid, to host these workshops with me around, teaching other women and their daughters about self-care and self-love. So they've been exposed to all this conversation their whole entire lives. And yet they still feel the pressure from the outside world that they have to perform, that they can't speak up, that they'll be ridiculed. We continue to have open conversations about it, but even having a parent like myself, they still talk about it. They still feel this pressure to be the good girl, to play the good girl rules. So what it is, it's massive, and it's something I think we breed in children from a very, very early age, especially when we turn around and we say to boys, like if they're, scruffing around and wrestling on the floor and, one gets hit or cuts their lip or one gets punched or something, and we roll our eyes and we're like, well, boys will be boys. But if girls behaved that way, we would be horrified.
Unladylike.
We would come down on them like a ton of screaming banshees and put a stop to it immediately. And we do. We're constantly telling girls to restrain themselves, to not own all their emotions, to not speak up. Actually, my daughter a couple of years ago at her school, she had 2 little boys that were poking her in the bottom, and she turned around and told them to stop, and they wouldn't. They kept doing it. They thought it was funny, and then all of a sudden she turned around and she yelled at them to stop, and she got told off by her female teacher. And I went to pick her up from school, and she came running into the courtyard bawling her eyes out, and I could hardly get any sense out of her. And as she calmed down, she told me what happened. I was ropeable beyond belief, and went into the principal wasn't there, and I did want to think about what I was going to say, but I went home and wrote him this email, and I referred to that as sexual assault. And I felt that point as well, where he I was thinking, he probably thinks I'm overreacting, and I was like, stuff it, like this is wrong. This is sexual assault. They've touched my daughter on her body, and they have no right to. She told them to stop. They kept doing it, and then she got told off by the teacher. She got humiliated by the teacher. Like something is really wrong. And even the teacher said to my daughter at the end of the class, I'm so surprised in you that, you're not normally not like that. You don't normally disturb the class. And, it's horrifying that, a little girl got told off for disturbing the class by standing up for herself, by wanting to own her body, wanting to own the space around her. The principal was fantastic. Like, he took care of it. The boys got told off and spoken to, and, he dealt with my daughter in a really beautiful, empowering way the next day. But in that moment, it really does show you that we let boys' behaviour go, and we tell girls to not disturb, the status quo, to not rock the boat, to not speak up, to not take up space.
And it's like the burden of propriety. Propriety. It always falls on women, like to maintain good behavior and good etiquettes. Like it's all on women and girls, like from even little girls, like they can't yell, they can't scream, and everything is allowed to boys. And the thing that really, touched me here was that even you are worried that you are going to make someone uncomfortable by your message, by the email that you were writing. Like for a second, that's the thought
about it, and I was like, no,
and that's the programming that we are ingrained with, right? Like, let's not make anyone uncomfortable, let's not make noise, and let's not come across as annoying that woman who has a problem with everything, like that's how it is. If you see movies or if you see any television programs, women who make noise are always shown as the arrogant bitch, the woman who has problem with everyone. And and we all want to stay away, like women with no heart, and who are just out to make everyone's lives miserable. That's the messaging that we get, and we don't want to be that. So we stay small, we stay insignificant, we stay quiet, we don't make trouble for anyone, right? So that we can be in the good books with everyone. But I think we're done with that. Like, no, why? Like, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm done with it. And I'm sure you are too. And all of us are.
Yeah, and I've dated guys, as I'm a single mother, so I've dated guys, in sort of currently, not like 10 years ago, but, in the last few years and stuff, I've been dating. And it's really interesting, going through different relationships and seeing how men do respond to women that speak up. And, this idea as well, and I think there is some truth to it, where men love the idea of a strong female, but in her presence, there are a lot of guys out there that are not used to it and will do certain things to shut you down. And I think there was a study that was done, I think it was last year, it's in the last year or two, by the University of Canberra in Australia, and they released that men are more likely to interrupt a woman 2.5 times more than a man will interrupt a man. That is so sad, and it's horrific with, and I've experienced it in relationships where I've looked back and I'm like, oh my God, yes, like, you would be constantly interrupted or have your ideas kind of put down.
Yeah, and that is the effect of toxic masculinity and patriarchy. It doesn't just affect women; it also affects men. So even when they want to support and they want to, be in the presence of a strong woman and let women, like as if they could let us, but just watch a woman speak up and stand up for her message and opinions, the pressure from the society and their peers, the fellow peers, is that programming is so strong in their mind that they can already feel like, people are going to say that he's a henpecked husband, or he doesn't have a spine, who wears the pants in the house, right? Like those kind of messaging. And that is so strong that even when they want to support, the default is to say no, they will just oppose you just because, they don't want you to be the power, like holding the power in the relationship. They want that power equation to stay, status quo and not change that. Which is why it is so important. Like I can just imagine the burden men are carrying on them by always having to take lead, even when they are not ready to, even when they are not equipped to take, they have to take lead in everything, whether it is family, finances, business, because there is no space for women to stand up and take the lead, because that's the way society has been constructed. So I think it's if we break these rules and if we break these paradigms and we all start standing up and speaking up and showing up for our message, it's just not going to be good for us, but I think it's going to be a massive relief for men. Like they are ready to have someone else take up the burden. Like they don't want to be the lone bearers of this baggage of everything on their shoulders.
Yeah. And I think, that idea that their masculinity gets threatened, and it doesn't. Like, men are allowed to be vulnerable too. And I remember dating a guy, and he was, I was at home and he was at his mate's house, and there was a group of them, and they were I don't know if you have this term in India, but in Australia we have a term bogan. He was with this group of really kind of gruff men in like black jeans, like with their bourbon and drinking like, beer and listening to like heavy metal music. And the guy I was dating at the time was texting me, and he said, "Hey, I've just had a really interesting conversation." And he had been listening to me talk about Coco Chanel and what she had done for women. And he had started to have this conversation about Coco Chanel, this fashion designer from the beginning of the century, who had this amazing impact on women and, about their empowerment and kind of releasing their bodies from corsets. And he was talking to these other men about this, and they were fascinated. They were like, "Tell us more." And so this guy I was dating was texting me going, "You've got to give me more information. I want to know more." And I was killing myself picturing this group of men in some garage drinking their bourbon and beer and are listening to death metal music, talking about Coco Chanel and empowering women. And I just thought, oh my God, like for one brave guy just changed the conversation. You know what I mean? Like, I think there are a lot of men that are very worried what other men think, but when they take that courage and step forward, there are other men out there who feel the same way, who want to know more. They don't want to get left behind. And this became really apparent to me with another guy that I dated, where I was talking about empowering women, and he kept saying, "But what about men? Like, we need this too. Like, who's going to empower us?" And at the time, this is a couple of years ago, at the time, I didn't have any answers. I was like, I don't know. I don't know what it means to be a man. I don't understand it. I don't know what it is men want. I don't know how to empower men. Now I've got a much better idea. But you're so right, you know what I mean? By empowering women and allowing women to take up space, it does decrease the burden for men. They're not out there trying to figure out how to, provide for their family alone. And all the struggle and the stress that comes with that. I've had some beautiful conversations lately with women who took on the role as being the primary income earner, and the husbands that stayed home and loved raising the children.
Yes, exactly. We need to give them, they need more credit to, we need to give them more credit. They deserve more credit. Like they are ready to take up the things that we are ready to hand over to them. But it's just that we need more conversations. We need more opportunities for everyone to come together in a space and have these conversations. Men don't want to be left behind. Like, they don't want to be the cavemen. No. And, just like while women are evolving, they want to be included. They want to be in these conversations. They want to share their own outlook. But sometimes I think the messaging that we also get, it's like men versus women. Like, how are we going to live in that kind of a world? Like, we are not at a war with them. No. We have to co-create this world together that we all want to live in and feel good about. They do see and they get it, like that patriarchy is hurting everyone, at least the men in my life. I'm lucky to be surrounded by men who are not threatened by women, and they are ready to have those conversations, and they are happy to have those conversations. And I think it's just that we need to include them. And not leave them out of these conversations and these discussions that we are having. And I think it's the ripple effect will start showing, maybe not in our generation, but maybe in our children's generation.
We'll make it happen in our generation.
They're going to make it happen.
But it's such an important conversation to have. And I think this has been a big part as well of Good Girls Don't podcast, is that idea, that the good girl doesn't speak up. She doesn't have these conversations. And it's great to have these conversations. I'm pretty sure I've said this on every podcast, but it's great to have these conversations with like-minded women, but change isn't going to happen there. Change happens when the conversation is uncomfortable, when we're taking the conversation into new arenas, with a new audience, and people, that brings more and more people into the conversation. Even if there's conflict, they're still engaging with the conversation. And I think that's really important, that we don't back away from that uncomfortableness, that we actually, walk into the feeling of uncomfortable, but with a really deep trust in ourselves, that we believe in what we have to say, we believe in what we've got to share, and believing that the world needs us right here, right now, to say it.
Yes, absolutely.
There was a brilliant, I started doing this thing last year where I was posting on Facebook for my business, but mindfully, and I was really sort of aware how there were certain posts I'd put up, and I was like, oh my God, I really want to hit post on this. And I could feel that fear rise and the uncomfortableness and that concern of, have I said too much? Have I said the wrong thing? Is someone going to get upset? And now I know every time that I hit that point, my only option is to press post. And I'm not kidding. Every time that has happened, that post has had an insane response from so many women. And the last one I did, I can't remember what the last reach was, but it was like over 50,000, the reach of that post. And it had like 300 comments. Like, it went crazy. And it's now, for me, is the thing, when I get to that point, when I'm writing something and I feel like, this is going to rock the boat, I know that's when I've struck gold. I know that's when I have to speak up.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is like, taking up virtual space, right? You are taking up virtual space when you are putting those words out there, when you're writing those posts out there. And that fear is the same. It's the same fear. How do I take up so much space? And I remember, like, when I have been writing these kind of posts for a long time now, but sometimes, some of the posts, I wrote a post about white privilege, and that was like so triggering for me. Like, how do I write about this without coming across as someone who's trying to shame people, but gently just put my point across. So there was this whole tug of war that I was going within myself, like, how do I take up this space without, and not offend anyone and not trigger anyone negatively. And every time people would comment on that, I would have another, like, sort of a mini anxiety attack. This is getting more visible. Like, people were sharing it constantly and people were commenting on it, and it made me feel so vulnerable, so out there for people to judge, for people to make assumptions about without knowing anything about me, that it was a really a testy time for me. But having done that once, it became easier the next time. I want to say things and I want to put my point across, because probably that was such an outlier thing for me to say, that I broke all the rules for myself by writing that, and then it became easier for me. But that's how it is. You have to go through these emotions and see what is coming up for you, what fears are coming up for you, and deal with those. Like, what you resist will persist. How are you going to keep yourself small, and how long are you going to keep these thoughts and these ideas and opinions inside your head? Because I read something from Brené Brown, and it was like, if creativity is not expressed, it's not like it goes away. It sort of metasizes, and it turns into frustration and anger and all sorts of ugly things.
Yeah.
So if you are not expressing your opinions, it's not like they're going to go away. It's not like your message is going to go away or you will stay small. It will metasize, and it will make you bitter, anxious and frustrated, and bitter and really not the person that you're meant to be.
And it's almost like your soul calling out. Like, it's not that they're bad things either, but it's just your soul literally saying, pay attention. Like, you've got to listen to this. Like, listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. And you're going, no, no, no.
Yeah. And like taking it on a spiritual level, like we are all channels of, the divine source, right? And if a message is coming through us, it is meant to be in the world. Yeah. And we know when, a message is the right message, that we know it is coming through. It is almost like it is downloaded through us, and we are the conduit for it, and we are just the channel for it to reach out into the world. And if you're not doing that, then how you are not being true to your own soul and your own energy. So that's there as well, right? And I think it's not multi-layered.
Yeah, and I think there's another really beautiful point here to make where, sometimes we'll say something and we'll be so worried about that perspective being presented, and yet when someone else reads it, however they read it can be so perfect for them. And I remember doing some body work on a client, and I kept getting this message of silly bitch, silly bitch, silly bitch. And I'm like, I cannot call my client who has paid me money a silly bitch. And it's all I could hear. And it wouldn't not go away. And I try to ignore it. And I'm like, I'm not going to get any other information for her if I don't say this. And so very calmly, I was freaking out. And I said to her, look, I'm really sorry. I just want to apologize now before. But I keep hearing these words. And I just need to say them to you. And I just remember thinking, oh my goodness, like this could go 100 ways wrong right now. And I said, I keep hearing these words, silly bitch. I said, does that mean anything to you? And I literally was like clenching my eyes shut, just waiting for her to be offended. And she burst into laughter. And I was like, what's so funny? And she said, oh my God, she goes, my grandmother used to call me a silly bitch. And I was like, okay, and she said, no, it was actually a funny term of endearment. Like she was this, sort of Australian country woman who would grab her grandchildren and you'd be like, oh, give me a hug, you silly bitch kind of thing. And I was like, wow, I never would have, for me, those words meant something so completely different. But for her, it meant, love and connection and adoration and, unconditional love. And so I think sometimes when we're so worried about our message, we have to remember we have to speak for ourselves and what comes through us. And our job is just to speak our truth. What other people do with that is none of our business. Yeah, and it's really hard. I did a post the other week and again, it, skyrocketed, went crazy. And then some guy replied or responded to it and he was like, oh, I'm offended, rah, 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 rah. What about this? What about that? And I was talking to Ashley about it and I was like, I said, you know what, before I respond, I just want to do a little bit of background research on this guy and see what he does, if he's got a perspective I haven't taken into account. And so on Facebook, we went and looked up his profile and we were losing it laughing. This was a man who had zero respect for women and there were hundreds of photos of him grabbing naked girls around their breasts.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And we just lost it laughing. And we were like, you know what? His feedback does not belong in our arena. We don't care what he thinks about us. We, as women, we don't have to buy into everybody's feedback, or their response to what we have to say. We just have to trust that we needed to say it because that was our truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And this comes up a lot. I think, as women, again, we feel like we owe them a response or we owe them something, right?
Yeah.
We don't. Like I had a friend of mine, she wrote something on her Facebook page and she had this guy comment something it was not like troll behavior, but it was sort of, condescending response. And she was like, how do I respond to him? And I said, you don't need to. He had been doing this for 3-4 days. And I said, why don't you delete and ban him from your page? And she was like, I can do that. And I was like, yeah. Like, he's not a paid client. He's not a paid client. He's not, he's not serving any purpose in your messaging, in your world right now. Like, what do you owe him? You don't owe him anything. But that's, sometimes we need external validation of that we don't need to be polite, and don't need to make everyone feel comfortable all the time, even if they are encroaching on our comfort and our, space, and they are taking up space where we are meant to have space. Like, this was her page. She hadn't gone on his page and said something.
Exactly.
It was her Facebook page. So she has the authority and the autonomy to delete and ban whoever she wants to,
And that even goes back to the whole idea. Yeah, but that goes back to the whole idea as well of owning your space. That not letting random people come in who have not been through what you've been through, who have not done the work you've done, to just be able to dump their crap in your space.
Yes,
no, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't need to do that. Like, but it is difficult, if that's been your conditioning of making everyone feel good and be accommodating, which is the worst word in the world, I feel sometimes. Like, we are all constantly told that girls should be accommodating. They should accommodate, or everyone and everyone's feelings.
Yeah.
Even as moms, that's our constant, like, we need to accommodate everyone in the family. So sometimes it can just go overboard, and you are accommodating others at the expense of your own truth and your own well-being. And that should never be the case.
Yeah, it's so true. It's, it's just everything, I guess, about breaking those good girl rules. And, as girls or females, we're taught to put everyone else's feelings above our own, that our emotions and our feelings, aren't important or aren't warranted, or that they're too much and we have to squash them. And then when we start, squashing our own emotions and our own feelings, we start cutting parts of ourselves off. So we can never be whole because we don't even allow ourselves to own all of ourselves. And like that you were saying before about how we're almost, forced into containing a smaller amount of space, just by following those rules, by not even owning, our very emotion or our words or our thoughts, of not wanting to rock the boat. And how important it is for growth that we have to get uncomfortable. Change is where it gets uncomfortable. Change is what happens when we do rock the boat. And I've loved conversations I've had where people have been like, oh, I don't know about this, and this is my opinion, and it's different from yours. And I'm like, hey, that's perfectly okay. And then they come back and they're like, oh, hang on, I got it. And they start to go through and accept that uncomfortableness, to ask more questions, to understand it. And, that beautiful growth is it's such an honor to watch. And especially, you would know this from your coaching as I do from my coaching, is that whole ability to create a safe space for someone to get uncomfortable, where there is no judgment, where they can start to express themselves and look at themselves, at a really raw level. And start seeing that everything within them is beautiful, that, mistakes are just feedback, that flaws are just perception, and often the things that we try not to exhibit are actually almost like our filters to see where our strengths actually are. I remember being told as in high school that my problem was that I talked too much. And so for ages, I tried not to talk so much. And now we've, got a podcast. And, I think this is the problem that we have, is sometimes we see things inside of ourselves, or we get told that it's too much. And yet those things that are too much are actually our superpowers.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And that is, when I work with my clients on their messaging and their content, this is what this is what I try to tap into. Where are they trying to keep, themselves small, and not someone sometime told them, like someone told you that you talk too much. Someone told them they're too smart, or, they are too something. And they started minimizing that in their words, in their content, in their voice. And that's what I am out to liberate. I'm going to I just want to set it free, and I want them to take up all the space that they need to take up in this world, with their words, with their videos, with their, if they are on podcasts, whatever they need, they are allowed to take up that space with their message. And probably the one thing I want to add to our entire conversation is that once you have become, habitual to taking up space, the next thing is probably just to be mindful and make space for others who are not as privileged as you, or, who haven't had that breadth of experience as you. So that's the, the onus on people who have taken up space. That's what we carry. We have to make sure that if we see someone who's playing small, who's constricting themselves, let's make space for them. Especially for communities that haven't been given their due. If we see people from those sections, people of color, or people of economically who are unequal, which is the case in my country. There is so much economic inequality. So I have to it is my privilege and my duty to make sure that I'm making space for those voices in whatever capacity I can. And that's the beauty of it. When we take up space, we also we get a position to start making space for others as well. And you can't do that if you are playing small. No. You can't do that for anyone, right? But the moment you take up space, you start creating space for others.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a beautiful thing where, the patriarchy has always been about competition and exclusion, because, there's only so much power to be had. And yet, feminism for me is the complete opposite. Instead of competition, it's collaboration. It's including people. It's such a more beautiful way of being able to expand ourselves and own ourselves, and then including everyone else in and saying, hey, come with me on this. This is empowering. This is amazing. There's enough for everyone here. And that's what I love about, not just feminism, but I think just even so many women in business are this way, where they want to celebrate other women. They want to give. They want to use their businesses to help other women. And I think it's just beautiful. Anything that empowers more and more people has this beautiful domino effect. The change becomes exponential. And that is a powerful thing to be. I remember being a little girl and thinking, if I could change one person's life, oh my God, that would be so amazing. And I was emptying the dishwasher, I think last week, and I started laughing. And I think, I've done pretty good on that one. And and how small my goal was, to change one person's life. Why don't we dream bigger as little girls? Why don't we teach them to dream big and to hold on to those dreams, as they transition through into adulthood, and to keep this strength running? Because we see so often women becoming smaller in their teenage. Little girls can, be big, and then all of a sudden around puberty, they start to shrink. They start to hold back, and they start to shut down, and they start feeling like everything's too much and they're too much.
I think it's because, that's the time that they become very aware of their womanhood. Around puberty, and that just separates them from boys immediately. In every way, they start feeling the physicality of it, the way of thinking of it. I think it just hits so hard, and then that's where most girls start shrinking themselves. They don't want to be seen too much now. They don't want to be, they don't want to stand out, because standing out can mean ugly things sometimes, right? Because that's again the messaging. She's asking for it.
They're in danger. Yes.
So yeah, there's so much to uncover, right? But that's the thing. Like, I feel like if you just start taking up space and owning your genius and claiming your voice, it starts from there. Like, even before you can help someone else, you have to help yourself, and you have to start taking yourself, seriously, and making sure that you are taking up all the space that you need for your energy to expand and just shine in this world. And then it will happen. It will start happening. Because once you have done that, there's no way that you are not going to pass that on to someone else. Like,
Exactly.
Once you've seen what it does for you, you are going to just pass it, keep on passing it over and just keep on expanding that.
Oh, that is so beautiful. I love that. And I feel like that is like the perfect ending to this conversation, because I don't feel like there's anything else I can add to that. I'm just sitting here just going, oh, yes, like, oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much for having a chat with us today, Swapna. I really appreciate it. And I love your passion and, the effervescence that you have to not just make a difference in your world, but to pass it on to, like we said, to include women around you, along the way. And especially, what you said before about, those who, are in the minority, those who are less fortunate, for whatever their circumstances are, those that don't have an equal footing for, all the things that society says we should and shouldn't be, and just breaking all of those rules. Like, I just think it's just so important that we keep expanding ourselves and we keep including others on the ride with us.
Well, the universe is expanding, so who are we not to?
Exactly. Right? It's almost, it's an obligation, to be honest, isn't it?
Yeah, we're meant to expand. Like, everything in this universe is expanding. So why shouldn't we? Of course, we are meant to do that.
Yeah, definitely. So how can people get a hold of you? You mentioned before that people are able to have a bit of a discovery chat with you.
Yes, and I'm sure you will put the links to it in the website. And yeah, I would love to, if you are anyone who's listening and they are feeling that they have a big message, they are out to change the world, and they are the rebel women on purpose, but they feel that there are some things that are just blocking them. They're not able to put those words. Sometimes it's difficult to articulate what you feel so strongly, and it is within you, but it doesn't just flow out into the words. So I'm here to liberate those words out of you. I'm here to set them free, and I'm more than happy to help you own your genius and claim your voice, and just shine with your message in this world, because we need it. We all need it.
Yes, we do.
So have a chat with me, so that we can get to know each other more, and let's see what we can do.
Well, I love it. And I love the fact that you're one of our freedom fighters, this idea of, fighting for the freedom of women to own their voices. It's so beautiful and powerful. And as well, you've got people can find you on your website as well at www.swapnathomas.com. And you're on Instagram?
Yes, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. The username is the same, the Swapna Thomas. And you can just find me and say hi if you find me.
Yeah, and that is one of the things that we do love as well about this podcast, is encouraging women not just to listen, but encouraging women to take action. So jump on Instagram, stalk Swapna with her permission, because that she'd love to be stalked, and support her in her own course as well, in helping to be a freedom fighter for other women, helping them to get their voice heard. Thank you so much, Swapna, for spending time with us and for sharing your wisdom and your passion with everyone today.
Thank you so much. It was a blast, and I'm up for it anytime again.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Hey, if you want to continue this conversation, head over to our Facebook page and be part of the revolution. You can find us at Good Girls Don't Podcast on Facebook. Please note we cannot create change alone. Your support, likes, comments, shares, and iTunes reviews will help us to give a voice to the insanely inspirational women and the controversial issues that we discuss.
If you'd like to be a part of our podcast, or if you have an issue that you have a burning desire for us to bring into the light, please contact us. With fierceness, Ashley
And Verity.
Get ready for the revolution.